Dr. Zixithera's crystalline hands trembled as she held the scanner over the small vial of amber liquid. The readings were unmistakable, toxicity levels that would kill most known species within minutes of ingestion. Her 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign of deep concern among her people, the Velthari. "This substance is lethal," she announced to the human standing across from her in the sterile white laboratory aboard the Interstellar Research Station Concordia. "How your species survived first contact with such a poison is beyond my comprehension." Dr. Sarah Chen, the human xenobiologist assigned to the joint research mission, smiled, an expression that still unnerved many of the alien researchers despite months of collaboration. "That's not poison, Dr. Zixithera. That's penicillin. Where we're from, that's medicine." The Velthari scientist's elongated neck tilted in confusion. Her species had evolved on a world where biological harmony was paramount. Their immune systems were so perfectly adapted that they had never needed to develop the concept of fighting infection with external substances. Disease was simply corrected by their body's natural processes. "Medicine?" Zixithera's voice carried the harmonic undertones of disbelief. "But the molecular analysis shows clear cellular disruption patterns. This substance actively destroys living tissue." Sarah nodded, pulling up a holographic display that showed bacterial cells under magnification. "Exactly. It destroys the cell walls of certain bacteria. The same mechanism that makes it deadly to those microorganisms makes it life-saving for us. We discovered it almost by accident. A contaminated culture dish led to one of our greatest medical breakthroughs." The irony wasn't lost on Zixithera. The Velthari prided themselves on precision, on careful cultivation of biological harmony. The idea that something beneficial could emerge from contamination, from what they would consider a laboratory failure, challenged everything she understood about proper scientific methodology. "Your species intentionally introduces toxins into your bodies?" she asked, her voice rising in pitch, another sign of agitation. "We introduce targeted toxins to fight greater threats," Sarah explained patiently. She had grown accustomed to these conversations over the past few months. Each species in the Galactic Scientific Consortium seemed to have their own particular area where human practices seemed impossibly reckless. Chemotherapy uses substances that are technically poisonous to fight cancer. Vaccines introduce weakened pathogens to build immunity. Even something as simple as alcohol, we use it to sterilize wounds even though it's toxic in large quantities. Dr. Zixithera's research partner, an insectoid Kithrix named Click-9 Ascending, chittered from across the laboratory. "The humans also intentionally expose themselves to solar radiation to synthesize nutrients," he added, his mandibles clicking in what his species considered amusement. "And they consume fermented plant matter that impairs their cognitive functions for recreational purposes." Sarah laughed. "Well, when you put it like that, we do sound pretty crazy." "Not crazy," Zixithera said slowly, her scientific mind beginning to process the implications. "Adaptive. Your species has learned to weaponize toxicity itself." She paused, her eyes focusing on the readouts again. This suggests an entirely different evolutionary pressure. Your world must have been extraordinarily hostile." "Earth can be challenging," Sarah admitted, "but that's made us resourceful. We learned to fight fire with fire, so to speak. Sometimes the best way to survive something trying to kill you is to use something else that's equally dangerous but more targeted." The Velthari scientist was quiet for a long moment, her crystalline fingers dancing over her datapad as she made notes. "I have been studying your medical database for 3 cycles, she said finally. "The patterns are remarkable. Digitalis from a plant that causes heart failure, used to regulate heartbeat. Warfarin, originally developed as rat poison, now used to prevent blood clots. Botulinum toxin, one of the most lethal substances known, used for both medical and cosmetic purposes." "The dose makes the poison," Sarah quoted, "something our physician Paracelsus said centuries ago. Any substance can be harmful in large enough quantities, and many harmful substances can be beneficial in small, controlled doses." Click-9 Ascending. scuttled closer, his compound eyes reflecting the laboratory lights. "This explains much about human military tactics as well," he observed. "You apply the same principles to warfare, using your enemy's strengths against them, turning disadvantages into advantages." Zixthara suddenly straightened, her eyes brightening to an almost blinding luminescence, the Velthari equivalent of excitement. "The applications," she breathed. "If we could adapt this principle, the Nixari plague that has been devastating the outer colonies. Traditional treatments have failed because the pathogen adapts too quickly. But if we could find something that harms the pathogen more than it harms the host," Sarah began. "Something that seems like poison but is actually medicine," Zixthara finished. "Dr. Chen, I believe your species may have just provided the key to saving millions of lives." 3 weeks later, as the first shipments of modified treatment protocols arrived at the affected colonies, Dr. Zixthara stood in the same laboratory, holding a new vial. This one contained a compound that would have horrified her months earlier, a substance that was technically toxic to Nixari physiology, but administered in precise doses that would eliminate the plague without harming the hosts. "Sometimes," she said to Sarah, her harmonic voice carrying notes of wonder, "the most profound wisdom appears to be madness to those who have not yet learned to see." Sarah smiled, watching the alien scientist label the vial with careful, precise movements. "Welcome to the human approach to problem-solving, Dr. Zixthara. When the universe hands you poison, figure out how to make it medicine." Outside the laboratory windows, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the small miracle of understanding that had just occurred between two vastly different species. But in that moment, the universe seemed a little less hostile, and a little more full of possibilities.